To this computer. Okay, so I just want to welcome everybody to our kickoff for Tandem Associates for our JDRF One Walk. And we are so excited to have you as a part of our Idaho walk team. And I just wanted to get on and share a little bit of information with you guys about who JDRF is and what we do with our revenue. And then also a little bit about the walk and an introduction to a youth ambassador who is actually living in Idaho with type 1 diabetes, and let her share a little bit about her, her experiences with type 1. So I will just get started really quick. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my PowerPoint. And whoops, let's go to the first slide. How about that? So first of all, JDRF is an organization that raises funds for type 1 diabetes research. And our tagline kind of is doing the greatest good for the largest number of people in the shortest period of time. And that is truly because we recognize that a cure might be a little more difficult to realize than we thought. So we are focusing on a lot of research methods that improve the lives of people as they are living with type 1 diabetes in the day-to-day, as opposed to waiting until we find an actual cure. Our mission, because of that focus, is improving lives today and tomorrow by accelerating life-changing breakthroughs to cure, prevent, and treat type 1 diabetes and its complications. Of course, the walk, well, let me talk about type 1 diabetes first. I know working for Tandem, a lot of you probably are well acquainted with T1D as a disease. And because of that, I won't spend that much time on this. I do know there are members of your employee base that are not very well acquainted with type 1. So I do want to acknowledge that there are a lot of misconceptions between type 1 and type 2. And type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder. It is not a consequence of lifestyle or nutritional choices or exercise or anything like that. It simply is the body has chosen to attack the beta cells in the pancreas. It makes the body unable to produce insulin. And because of that, insulin is an essential hormone in our metabolism of food and lots of other things that I'm sure we don't even understand. But it is a key player in food metabolism. And so because of that, we do have to inject insulin manually or do it by a pump when people have type 1 diabetes. Obviously, autoimmunity is a very complex thing. There's a lot of different expressions of autoimmunity with type 1, and killing off the pancreas, just one of those. So insulin essentially is like a key. So your cells need the key to unlock them to get the sugar and the glucose from the food that you eat to sustain day-to-day life. So of course, insulin therapy is not a cure. It's purely life support for people living with type 1. And so with that, that's kind of a nutshell. I don't know if Chrissy wants to add anything while I'm talking about type 1.
No, just kind of what you said. I mean, it's hard when you grow up and you have diabetes, you have type 1, you have type 2, and you learn about these things, and you have a 6-year-old who is diagnosed with diabetes, and you're like, but they exercise, they don't overeat, they haven't made poor lifestyle decisions, all these things that you hear about, that what is diabetes, and that's not what type 1 is. So it's important that people know the difference.
Right. The other thing I would like to point out on this screen is you can administer your insulin and eat the exact same thing every single day and have vastly different results. There's a lot of different hormones at play in the body, and a lot of times it's very unpredictable how the body will actually react to physical activity or stress or illness, or a lot of different things actually will impact a person's blood sugar. And so it's a very challenging disease to manage and to live with. But it is possible with a lot of incredible technology that is about, like the Tandem, T-Slim with basal IQ, and the new one, it's not basal IQ. I feel really dumb that I don't know that. But control IQ, I think is what it's called. Anyway, on to the next slide. JDRF is, we have our hands in a lot of different buckets of research funding. So we do focus a lot on the cure therapies, but we also are looking for ways to improve lives. Along the pathway of discovery, there are a lot of different phases. So when things are in discovery versus once they've received FDA approval versus when they're actually available for patients. And so we are involved in all those different aspects when we have funding in the game, just to ensure that that all those aspects are being looked at and we don't neglect any area of that pipeline. This is showing that JDRF, we've been around for 50 years this year. And in that amount of time, we have been able to fund over $2 billion in research for type 1. And it's a little bit dated. In 2016, we were able to fund 117 new research grants. And we're also in 6 different countries across the globe. So having that global reach really increases the types of research that we're able to fund. I think that's about all I wanted to cover on this page. Oh, the advocacy arm, we do partner with national governments to secure funding through the National Institutes of Health, and because they are funding a lot more research than we are able to fund through JDRF. And so that's important because the special diabetes program is about $150 million a year. And we do have to go back and lobby for that on a regular basis to ensure that funding is continued. Now I want to introduce you to Claire and Chrissy. And I want to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can let them introduce themselves to you before I start showing some pictures of cute Claire. They're going to share a little bit with you about what it's like to live with type 1 and how it affects their family, their everyday life, and all sorts of things that you wouldn't think of possibly with the disease. So take it away.
Well, I'm Chrissy Shelton. I'm the mom, and this is Claire, and she's our type 1 in the house. And the moment she was, I get a little emotional because she's my baby. But anyway, the moment she was diagnosed, we just jumped right in as a family to do the best that we could for her. That, like Stacy had said, that, insulin is not a cure, but it's a way for her to manage her disease. And we want her to have a long and happy life with diabetes, not in spite of it, but because of it. And so we just jumped right in and got involved with JDRF, and we learned a lot, and we're thankful for our diabetic community. And it's hard to say that, like, you're thankful for something like that, but these children, these families, the folks at JDRF are amazing resources and advocates and mentors. And it's just amazing to see what everybody can do together. It's not just one, it's everybody. But it's a whole different life. I mean, insurance is a joy when you have a child with an autoimmune disease. We're very fortunate. We have good insurance. We've always had good insurance. And that's not the case for every single family who is dealing with type 1 diabetes. And that's a huge burden and a huge problem for their health. And my husband and I look at each other, and sometimes something comes back and it's more than we thought, but we're like, you know what? We're not going to climb this hill because we know other families are struggling to choose between giving their child insulin and putting food on their table. And that's not the choice that we have to make. And we're very fortunate about that. And so we try to do everything that we can to help. And one of the ways we do is through our volunteer efforts, our advocacy efforts, our fundraising efforts in JDRF, because we don't want, just because we come from a different spot than another family, that doesn't make our kid more special than their kid. Every kid has a right to fulfill their life, goals, even with diabetes. So we want every child to be successful. And, and then, you talk about living with it. It's funny, especially when she was younger, when we would travel, it's like, we have a whole separate suitcase just for Claire and her medical supplies, and other families don't have to do that. We like to boat. We're always like, oh, does somebody have a special bag so that her insulin pump can stay in the cooler because it's 100 degrees outside? We can't just go anywhere. Everything is a thought. Everything is a plan. Do we have enough insulin? Do we have enough supplies? What if her pump fails? Do we have the backup stuff? Just nothing is easy. I know life isn't easy. This is just another way that we have to deal with stuff, and people don't get it. She handles this really well. But people don't understand that I've already looked at the table, the spread that you have for my child, and I have in my head, I look at a piece of pizza and all I see is numbers. I look at a pop and my first is, what soda are you feeding my child? What juice content? Is it 100% juice? Is that, and everything, it's, she's not allergic to anything, so I'm thankful for that. But it's not just going to a birthday party and saying bye. It's talking to the parents. When she was younger, she didn't get invited to stuff because parents didn't want to deal with it. We had a couple families who did take the time to meet with us beforehand, before the party would start, and say, this is what we're serving. Claire can eat anything, but it's a matter of managing the food she's taking with her blood sugar level. And so what they did was they would offer not something separate for Claire, but they would add stuff into the whole. So instead of just serving pizza and ice cream, I noticed a lot more friends had pizzas and salads and other foods in there, so that Claire just wasn't singled out, but it was in better balance for her, for us, if she would have a pizza, a salad, and then the cake, instead of just having pizza and cake and pop. So you just can't just send your kid somewhere when they have type 1 diabetes. You have to have somebody who understands what to look for, especially when they're younger. Claire's 16 now. I don't always know what's going on, good, bad, or indifferent. But when she's 6, when she's 7, we were her pancreas. We controlled everything, and we needed to know what was happening. She has an older sister, and I worried. Sometimes I'm like, I forget that we even have an older child because we have to spend so much time on Claire to keep her alive, that she took a back seat to it. So it's definitely a different way of life, having a child with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed February 10th, 2010. So it's 19th. I had their date wrong. But I've had type 1 diabetes for 10 years now. And before we went into the doctor's office, I was drinking a ton of water. Like, before school, the only thing I did was drink water the entire morning. I was having a hard time making it to the bathroom. I peed on our front porch at our old house so many times because I just couldn't hold it in any longer. And it was like a 15-minute walk from school to my house. And then my breath started smelling really sugary. And so my mom knew someone whose child was a type 1 diabetic. So she kind of suspected that. So I went into the doctor's office, and sure enough, my blood sugar is over 700, and you want it more near the 100 range. So it was definitely not what it was supposed to be. So I got into the hospital, and they started teaching my family and I all about what type 1 diabetes is and how to treat it. If you see my then picture on the PowerPoint, that was me when I was first in. And it didn't mean too much to me at the time because I had a ton of attention on me. I remember people coming in with teddy bears, and I was like, yes, this is the life. I had the best bacon. So it didn't affect me too much when I was younger because I was less aware of it, but it affected my parents a lot more. Every single night they would be checking my blood sugar, and if I was low, giving me juice, or if my blood sugar was high, giving me some more insulin. And they were, like my mom said, my pancreas when I was little. But as I started growing up, I've had to take on more responsibility with this. And it's scary at times. One time I was at a dance competition and I took too much insulin for lunch and it was time to go on soon. And I ended up having 10 juice boxes. I'm not even over exaggerating. And I was still going low, and it was just a whole thing. I was sobbing. I was having almost a panic attack because I didn't want to let my team down because of my blood sugars. Because when your blood sugar is low, you have the possibility of having a seizure, and you can't dance if you're having a seizure. So things like that have been tough, like playing lacrosse. That's been new in high school, but it's not just you perform for a 3-minute routine and then you're off and then you can check your blood sugar again. These games are over an hour long and you're doing physical activity the entire time, which can make my blood sugar go high and low. It's actually doing both all the time. And so sometimes that's difficult because I have to go out of the game, and it's it's hard. I mean, it's like, because I feel like I'm letting down the team just because of my blood sugars. And so that's sometimes really hard, but you know, it's always a good thing to take the positive side of it and do what you can to improve your life with living with type 1 diabetes. And so that's why we've gotten involved in the JDRF One Walks. And so ever since we first started, my family and I have raised over $20,000 to go towards better treatments and eventually finding a cure. And we invite all of our family and friends to come, and so they can see how big this community really is and how many people really care about finding these improvements for type 1 diabetics and finding the cure for all of us. That even goes to advocating. I remember when I was little, I even went at a health fair booth to teach people about type 1 diabetics, going to Girls and Boys Club to teach them about it, and the Children's Congress. As Stacy had earlier mentioned with the Special Diabetes Program, type 1 diabetics from around the world, even, it's not just the United States, are able to go to members of Congress to speak about the Special Diabetes Program, which funds $150 million per year towards this JDRF research. And so it gives us as type 1 diabetics the opportunity to tell our own story and advocate for finding these better treatments and eventually a cure. And so that's why I believe it's so important to encourage everyone to go to these JDRF One walks and do what we can to be able to help not only me living with type 1 diabetes, but all of my friends I've met through camps, people I don't even know. I mean, it's a scary disease. I mean, you go to bed and you're thinking, did I take too much insulin and I'm going to have a seizure in the middle of the night? Or did I not take enough and I'm going to spend my entire day high with a high blood sugar? And so I definitely believe it's super important for us all who really care about this disease and wanting to turn type 1 into type none to do our part, advocate, and raise money.
Yeah, and I just would like to add that, you know, like Claire says, you have to look at the positive of these things. One of the hardest things, you know, type 1 diabetes, you know, she can still live a normal life and she can still live a long, long life. One of the things when I look at these type 1 young people and adults, and you look like, oh, hey, they're normal. They look just fine. But there was a quote that said, just because I carry it well doesn't mean that it's not heavy. And so I got that a little bit wrong. But even though you see a Claire and she's got above a 4.0 and she's involved in FFA and raises swine and dances and lacrosse, it doesn't mean that every day is not a struggle to live. And it's not, you know, it's a constant reminder. There is no break from type 1 diabetes. So even though she wears a smile on her face and even though she's successful in all these things, she never gets to take a break from this. She's always thinking the next thing to live. So I think that's about it. Why we fundraise, why we do what we do.
That was awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. A lot of times I know it's hard, I know, to ask some of these families to share their life and be a little bit vulnerable. But I know that it means a lot to you guys at Tandem to be a little better acquainted with what it's like to live with type 1. And I think it'll help you do your jobs better as well, ultimately, if you're dealing with customers on the phone that are dealing with a lot of these challenges. I think having that personal touch point that Claire just shared with you is a little memory that you can ping on the back of your mind when you're talking to a mom or a patient living with type 1. So I just want to thank you guys, Chrissy and Claire, so much for hopping on with me and sharing your life. So at JDRF, we are working on making a better tomorrow today. And the way that we're doing that is through our fundraising events. Our largest T1D event in the world is the One Walk. And you guys have gotten involved with our One Walk as a team. And I know you guys have already raised over $1,200, which is so great. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. And hope that we will see that continue as the season progresses. This year's walk is going to look a little bit different. I won't even try and sugarcoat that. It's a really crappy situation we're all in right now. And because of that, we have to be really careful about getting people together in a big group. Diabetes is one of those compromised populations that they talk about, where the complications from COVID-19 could potentially be a lot more life-threatening. And so because of that, we've taken the stance that we are going to move forward with events virtually this spring. And what that means to you guys is to have everybody get out and get active wherever you are. If you live with roommates, or if you have a family that lives with you, take them out and get active on a trail, or at a park, or in your neighborhood. It doesn't even have to be anywhere fancy. I've seen a lot of pictures of people actually walking on treadmills this spring as we do virtual walks. Get active and help and do something healthy for your body on May 16th. That's what we're hoping to do. And then find ways to celebrate the day. Make a poster for your team if you want to get balloons, or wear matching shirts. Team t-shirts are great. And be sure to take pictures and videos to commemorate your experience. And then as the day moves forward, we will obviously be sharing content on our pages. So we want to share any content that you guys are sharing. So we do ask that you tag us at JDRF Mountain Valley and use the hashtag JDRF OneWalkID for One Walk Idaho. And obviously have fun with it, make it whatever you want it to be for your immediate biosphere. And hopefully we'll be able to get together soon and celebrate our successes this year. So no matter what your connection to type 1 is, everybody who's doing this is walking because we all believe in a world where type 1 no longer exists. So this slide just kind of shows how to get the ball rolling. Tandem Diabetes has a team on our website called Tandem Diabetes Boise. You can go to walk.jdrf.org and select that team from the dropdown when you go to register, or you can type in that direct link right into your browser. And then this bottom part, of course, is something I'm encouraging everybody to do. We all have different levels of comfort this year, especially with the economy in a little bit of a vulnerable position. So yourself and your networks may not be in a huge position to give, and that's okay. We just want everybody to do something. Do what you feel capable of doing, and we will be absolutely tickled with every dollar that comes in. I do encourage you to set a goal, because oftentimes people are motivated when they see that you're working towards a specific dollar figure, whether it's $100 or $1,000. If you share that goal, people will be more inclined to donate to help you get there. And then the fundraising components, I always encourage people to keep it top of mind and always be asking. The number one reason people give is because they were asked. And I think a lot of times we get into a position where we're scared to ask people because of what we think. So we think our father or our uncle or somebody, they've been doing layoffs at their plant and he can't donate to me. So we put those words in their mouth before we even make the ask. And I always just encourage everybody to ask everyone. The worst they can say is no. And that's my best advice to anybody who is willing to do some fundraising for any cause that you're involved with. And then utilizing your participant center is really great. We have a lot of incredible tools, email templates. You can upload a picture, you can change the page content. It's really great, and I'm more than happy to help anybody who's willing to do that might be struggling to utilize that page in the best way. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to help. So it goes back to setting goals. Like I said, I think this is the most important part of fundraising. The average team that actually does something raises about $2,500. And that, when I say does something, that means you put the messaging out there and you actually try. And the goal for each team member is $100. So if you have about 25 people on your team, each raising $100, that's an easily achievable goal. Obviously, recruiting more people to your team helps you be more successful with your fundraising. And then a B1P is actually a $1,000 fundraiser. We are planning on having a post-walk reception at Big Al's to recognize all of our top fundraisers. And so if you are a $1,000 fundraiser or above, you'll get invited to that event. and be able to come out and celebrate with us. The best ways to fundraise, I feel, are on Facebook. Truly, I think Facebook is the easiest way to fundraise, and there's a really great integration between the JDRF pages and Facebook to create a Facebook fundraiser for you, and people can actually donate to your walk team without leaving Facebook. It could not be easier. Email is still a really great utility to use for people near and far. We stock the webpage with templates for you to use, whether you are a corporate team member with no connection to type 1, or if you actually have a connection to type 1, there's a parent template, there's a person with type 1 template, there's just a generic template, like I'm participating because I want to help. There's a lot of different tools there for you to use. And then, of course, inviting people to join you in this effort. My favorite thing that I see people do is ask people on Facebook, if you can't spare $1 to support me, share my message on your page. We never know who we are coming across in our day-to-day life that is connected to someone with type 1. It's kind of like an exotic car. I liken it to when you buy a car and you think it's so unique and nobody has it, and you start seeing it everywhere when you're driving around and you're like, wow, that totally defeated the purpose. So that's kind of how type 1 diabetes is. There's a lot of people out there living with it that you would never even guess. Like looking at Claire, you'd never guess Claire has a chronic illness that affects her life every day just because of how active she is and how involved she is at school, and she gets good grades. She's not in a hospital connected to an IV like people who really look sick. So you never know. I would challenge you to ask, if you don't think you know someone with type 1, I would challenge you to ask 10 people that you are connected to on a daily basis, and I bet you will find one person with type 1, whether it's their child or another loved one. So that kind of concludes my thoughts for today. Obviously, this is a very brief overview, and there was a lot of information shared that I may not have hit on all the topics, and you may have questions. And if that's the case, I am more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'm going to come back on, stop my video sharing. I did not make a slide with my email address. Joya and Madison have my email, but I will share it now. It's sbowen@jdrf.org. And you can email me with any questions. And if you have questions for Claire, I can forward them to her and let you know if you have questions about type 1. But other than that, I just want to encourage you all to hop on and get registered for the Tandem team and figure out how you want to observe Walk Day on the 16th of May. There's a lot of fun ways and creative ways I've seen teams doing this. So I would love to see how you guys are going to choose to do that. Claire, do you guys have a plan for Walk Day yet? Thought about it?
We don't have a plan for Walk Day. However, we have a great park behind our neighborhood. So we were thinking of doing a little bit of a social distance meetup and walk around 4 laps.
Halfway.
Yeah, is a mile, and there's a parking lot, and it's close to home, and everybody can stay within their social distancing guidelines. And
awesome.
So that's our initial plan for our virtual one walk. And then of course we have family all over. So
yeah.
Great. Well, I would encourage that out of state family to participate as well, and
absolutely
our hashtags and tag us, and we can share a way and increase our geographic reach. That's the other cool thing about a virtual walk is people can engage and be a part of the event without actually living in Idaho. And so I'm excited to see how far our reach can be. I'm not sure. I know we have teams who have friends and family in Europe, so.
we can't get that far. I think we could get like Arkansas and Florida, but
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tandem friends, well, Chrissy and Claire, thank you so much. I appreciate all your help with sharing with our friends at Tandem.
absolutely.
And Tandem friends, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you need any support in any way, and I'm happy to help. And happy Walk Day and happy fundraising. Let's turn.